Welcome to the space between two lines. I'm Alex Saunders, and this is a space for real, honest conversations about fertility, pregnancy loss, and the journey to parenthood. Here, we hear the stories of people navigating the highs, the lows, and everything in between. A place to feel seen, understood, and less alone. Because every story matters, and so does yours. In today's episode, our guest shares her journey living with endometriosis and the decision to undergo egg collection in her early 30s. What began as a proactive step to protect her future fertility became an experience that deeply impacted her both physically and emotionally. She opens up about the realities of fertility preservation, the complications she faced, and what she wishes she had known, offering an honest and important perspective for anyone navigating a similar path. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I think I'm not deliberately not saying my name, but I think the pressure that potentially people who are single and 30 feel is already quite large. And so I think if I was people that my friends and family were then to know, there'd be even more pressure being 31, 32 already and then having fertility issues. I think the pressure would just be too much at this stage of my life. So for me and my mental health, that's kind of what I've decided to do.
Yeah. We just want to start by chatting a little bit about your medical history. When were you first diagnosed with endometriosis and PCOS, and what led to that diagnosis?
Yeah, so I think for me, I was probably a little bit different to the typical endo story, which I think is important. So I probably have never had painful periods. They've never been super heavy. I never felt like that was my story and it was a really late diagnosis. So when I was 25, I had a boyfriend at the time, and during sex, I started to get quite a lot of pain and then getting a lot of urinary frequency symptoms. So quite niche, probably. I had a really trusted GP at the time and I went and saw her and she sent me for an ultrasound. And on the ultrasound, they actually found a 10 centimeter ovarian cyst. So really quite large. And so from then I was referred to a gynecologist. And I think this is really important. Probably part of the story was this gynecologist. She was really good, but she specialized in everything. She delivered babies. She had a really wide scope. So I had that surgery and look, I probably was really underprepared. I had to stay overnight for that. And from then I had really bad complications. So with any gynecological surgery, they blow you up. They put gas inside you so they can see the structures. I went to the GP and the GP's like, I think you've got a PE. I think you've thrown a clot. I had to rush, get a CT. Didn't have a clot, but just the side effects of this first surgery were really bad. And then kind of never really recovered, had a lot of pelvic pain after. Went back to the surgeon. She was like, look, it's fine. Maybe see a women's health physio, which I saw and they were excellent. But these symptoms went on for 25. I reckon I was 27.
How old were you when you had the surgery?
So 25 when I had the initial surgery just for the cyst. And at that time, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovaries. Then the symptoms went on for 2 years, but kind of increased, still had really bad urinary frequency, still had pain during sex. And then I started to get a lot of bowel symptoms. So it kind of seemed like irritable bowel. So that had to change diet. So there was a lot of weird symptoms. And I think probably for a lot of females, in their 20s, we're on contraception.
Yes.
So you're not noticing your period because you're either skipping it or you've got an IUD. You don't associate those symptoms with endo because you can't associate it to your period. I was really lucky that I had a really good GP who listened to me. She really investigated really thoroughly. And I think this is the thing again about endo is there's no perfect test. So on that first ultrasound, when they found a cyst, they're like, oh, yep, that's obviously what's causing her symptoms. But as they went on, she then sent me for another scan at a different clinic that was specialized in gynecological ultrasounds. And through that, they found endo. So it was probably a 2-year period of back and forth to the old surgeon and the GP. And then once the scan had found endo, GP referred me to an endo-specific surgeon. And that's when, to be honest, my life changed. The surgeon was excellent. She knew everything about it. She understood. She was like, yep, this is all normal. This will all be endo. Like, there's just so much relief that all of these symptoms that were so weird and like just not really making sense, it wasn't me. And she was excellent. So I had a laparoscopy, I think I would have been 27, 28, and it showed stage 3 to 4 endo. It was all over my bowel. It was all over my bladder. It had attached my ab muscles to my stomach. There was a stage there between that 2-year period where I'd got such bad stomach pain and like bowel symptoms so bad that I was like bleeding that I had to present to Alfred ED. And like at ED, they're just like, oh, it's probably a stomach virus. Like, couldn't really explain it. And I think that would happen to so many women, that you present with abdominal symptoms and it's hard because in emergency, you're dying. That, like, as bad as that sounds, like, that's not the place for you, but there's no other place for you. But again, I was so lucky I had a really good GP. And after that incident, that was the catalyst to send me to the surgery, like get the ultrasound and the surgery. Had the surgery 2 years ago, pretty good. I'd been really good, like back to living life, back to exercising regularly, back to feeling a lot more like myself. And then this year, I had my second surgery. It was the end of last year. I kept getting recurrent kidney infections. So if the endometriosis is wrapped around your like urethra or your bladder, it just means you're more prone and susceptible. So got a lot of kidney infections, and again, had a great GP, and she was like, I think you should go and just see her and see what she says. 2 years later, I had to have another lap. So that was this year. And again, 1 hour surgery turned into a 4-hour surgery and was all over my bladder, all over my urethra. That had like stuck to my ovary. So they had to free that. It was a bit of a tricky one and a bit of a longer recovery than I expected. But it's been a bit of a journey, bit probably different. I think it's important for women to hear that it's a whole body disease. Like this is not like just related to menstrual cycles. And as I said, contraception masks a lot of things, which is great because it helps with pain, but it can cover up a lot of the symptoms that we generally tend to experience.
And I think there is a lot more awareness now, or is coming to light, how serious this disease is and how much it impacts women. But I think for a long time, and as you kind of explained of what happened to you, you hear about women getting palmed off when it comes to these symptoms and nothing really happening, and it gets to a stage like you did where you've got stage 4 endometriosis like all through your body and nothing's been done about. So I guess the question for me, because I don't know too much about it, does endometriosis build up over time? Like when you went to that original specialist, could they have picked it up there?
Yeah, so that's probably my question as well. And I probably don't know enough. And it's probably one of those things, if I think about it in the health perspective, she's like gone in, got the cyst, and then done her job. About the time it's flared up, like there was some underlying and it's kind of reared its head. That's what the second surgeon kind of hypothesized, but you never know. And again, it's so hard to see. Like, I can probably give the photos to share on Instagram, but they take photos and it looks like spider webbing. Like, I guess if you're not trained for it or you're not looking for it, you wouldn't see it. Yeah, it's probably one of those things. Do I think it was probably there? But there's not enough evidence or research. So it's just one of those unfortunate things, I think.
And going back from that original PCOS diagnosis and having the surgery, and then how much you've spoken about all the physical impacts on your life, but what were the emotional impacts moving through that and going through that pain and visits to hospital and all of those kinds of things? And especially in the early days where you didn't actually know what was wrong, like how did you deal with that emotionally and what was it like?
As I said, I think I was really lucky. I had a really good GP who didn't dismiss me, and I think that's really important. I think, though, it really impacts your mental health probably more than I gave it credit for at the time. I'm probably a generally anxious person, but just when you don't know, like, how you're going to wake up and you can't trust your body in a weird way, I think it just contributed to a lot of anxiety. I was in a really supportive relationship in that 2-year period when I wasn't diagnosed, so I was probably lucky in that way, but it impacted the relationship for sure. You don't feel like sex all the time or any of that, and you can't explain it because you don't have a diagnosis. So it kind of just, it's a you thing. I think when you get that diagnosis, people understand slightly more, or there's a bit more sympathy. But when you're in this weird in-between phase, you just kind of feel like a bit of a lemon. You kind of feel just like, oh, what's wrong with me? A little bit. And like it was COVID in that time, so it's hard to say. But it definitely impacted my ability to exercise. That was really big, and it really impacted my weight, probably yo-yos generally. with polycystic and endo, just with the hormones, all of that. And then just the pain that I was experiencing, I couldn't exercise. So again, that makes you depressed and anxious and all of that stuff. So it definitely contributed. Probably can only reflect on that now though. Like at the time, you probably put it down to other things, but now reflecting on it.
And other than having the surgery, is there anything else, any medication or anything else you can do to help reduce even like the symptoms from the hormones and how you're feeling? Is there anything else you can do to try and balance that out, or is the surgery the main?
A lab is the only thing that can definitively diagnose and remove. There's lots of evidence now that excision surgery, so it actually being excised, is the only way, but the chances are it will grow back. The things that help are obviously not having a period. That helps. The pill or like a IUD, they kind of recommend. It doesn't treat it, but it masks the symptoms. It helps with the pain. And although I say that my period wasn't heavy or painful or any of those things, your symptoms do kind of mimic your cycle. The abdominal cramping, bloating, the bowel symptoms are all kind of worse week or two pre-period. If you can kind of keep your progesterone and like that at the same level, it does help a little bit. But yeah, the only actual treatment to remove it is a laparoscope, which does make a big difference. But again, it's major surgery. It's expensive. It's definitely not cheap. And you can't go public. Like, it's a lot of money. So I'm very lucky that I'm able to do that as well.
And you had a surgery 2 years ago, you said, and then another one recently. So what does the future look like for you? Is that reoccurring surgery? You don't know yet. Is it a wait and see?
It's a real wait and see. And again, my second surgeon that I found, I really respect her, have a lot of time for her, and really trust her. And I kind of had that discussion this time. I was like, how many can I have? Is there a limit? And she's like, I might have done, like a 30-year-old, I might have done 15 surgeries on them. It's just awful. So she's like, we just do as much as we need to at the time. But this time she felt a bit more concerned, I'd say, that the amount that had grown back in the 2 years. If you can manage your symptoms, which mine are generally with the contraceptive pill, I think I'm pretty lucky.
Was there any times that you didn't feel supported by the medical system? Like, you've obviously got an amazing specialist and surgeon now, but was there any times throughout that period that you didn't feel well supported?
I think the first surgeon probably, but I was naive as well.
Yeah.
I didn't, think too much about it or ask the right questions. But when I went back with my follow-ups and I was like, oh, I'm still in a lot of pain. And she's like, oh, yeah, that's kind of normal. So you never want to be the whinger. I'm a bit like, okay, it's normal. But probably I should have pushed a bit harder. And at ED, again, ED is an interesting place. I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but obviously you can feel that supported in ED. So there are good people out there. It's just about finding the right ones. I think even women's health physios, just making sure you've got that really robust care team that when you're unsure, you can rely on them and you feel like what they say you can trust, because I think that's the most important thing.
Now that you've had your surgery and you're living day to day, pretty much pain-free, like you have symptoms now and then, but it's
pretty good. So that's a thing. Although laps are annoying, they work. They really do make a really big difference. And again, it comes down to surgical technique and expertise, but mine is excellent. So I think that right now I feel great, but the surgery was in, 4 months ago.
And what does the recovery look like with the surgery? Like, how long do you have to take off work? How long does it take you to get back to feeling like your normal self, being able to exercise and all those kinds of things again?
So the first one I had, not the cyst, that was a disaster. That was probably a week off work. The second one I had on the Friday day procedure, I was back walking Saturday. Really quick recovery. The one I just had, I had to stay overnight because when it involves your kidneys and your urethra, they now thread a catheter through so they can see. So you have to stay overnight with that one. And because it went from 1 hour to 4 hours, the anesthetic really knocked me around. I had that shoulder tip pain again because I was under for so long. And so it was a bit longer this time. I was on a Friday. It's out on the Saturday. I think I was back to work on the Tuesday from home. So 4 days, but it would have been probably a good week till I exercised. A bit longer this time, but everyone's different. Obviously, 1 week, it's not great, but then you're pretty much back to normal after that, I'd say.
Yeah. Anything they recommend you do as like in terms of your lifestyle that can help with symptoms?
Not particularly. So dietitian, they always recommend to around like good diet, like fiber, protein, general, just like healthy living. And women's health physio is always good, just to ensure that your pelvic floor is kind of not overactive or underactive. That can be a symptom or a side effect. So they'll often recommend checking in with them. But otherwise, yeah, not really.
So moving into your decision to undergo egg collection and freeze some eggs, you were 31 at the time. What factors led you to making this decision?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I have to say, probably off the top, I had done a lot of research, or not research, but a lot of looking at egg freezing. There's a lot of really good articles and stuff around this. So I had done a lot of research on it. It is an interesting topic, and I think probably I don't want to have children by myself. That's probably something I know. And if I end up having no kids because I haven't met anyone, I'm okay with that decision. And I'd probably thought that I'm still 30, 31. I'm still pretty young, I would say. And a lot of the egg freezing companies are in like the AXS 500, and there is a lot of scaring young women into freezing their eggs. So I probably was on the side of it's not for me, to be honest. I was like, maybe if I got to 35, we'd have that conversation. But I got to the specialist, so my surgeon, we're about to do my second laparoscope, and she said, have you thought about freezing your eggs? And I was like, I don't think it's for me. I just think we're scaring women. I think when I meet the right person, there's maybe discussions, but right now. And then she was really good. She was just like, look, it's completely up to you. There's absolutely no pressure, but like you're in the prime age. So the research suggests that from 31 to 33 is when your eggs are at the best quality, because they can't test egg quality. So 31 to 33 is like prime. She was like, you have endometriosis. So every time we do a laparoscope, we damage some eggs, because when they take it off the ovary, you can damage eggs. It's like the more surgeries you potentially have, your fertility declines. Again, that's what the evidence shows, but there's not a lot. And she goes, you don't have a partner. And she said, for me, that you're a better candidate than someone with a partner. Because if you were 31 to 33, had a partner, had endometriosis, I'd say maybe just try to think about having a baby soon. That's the best test for fertility. But she said, you're 31 and you can make this decision by yourself. You're not being influenced by a man. And then it's done. You don't have to have this conversation. Say you've met someone at 33. You don't have to have this conversation 3 months into dating. Gives you a bit more time. It made me think about it. And I said, how do you know who to trust with egg freezing? They're making a lot of money from you. And she was like, this is the only doctor I would trust. And she gave me a name. I think she's like, just meet with her. She's not going to make you do anything you don't want to do. Hear the information. And then if you decide, you decide. I was really lucky. They work out of the same rooms, and I was at reception and kind of just happened to get an appointment pretty quickly, just with how that works. I think I saw her within a month. It was pretty quick.
Is this through like an overarching fertility?
Yeah, so my doctor is Melbourne IVF. They have satellite sites. I think they were at my surgeon's rooms. They could kind of work out the appointment, so I could have it in June. It was just on telehealth. I had my AMH tested, but also I think it's important to sometimes hear some numbers, because I think you get some unrealistic expectations of what your numbers should be. Mine was 13, my AMH, and the doctor said to me, it's not dire, but it's not great. So that was her quote. Yeah. So I was like, okay. Then she goes through the stats. And again, she was excellent. I didn't feel pressured at all. It was very much just an appointment that presented the facts, which is what I needed. And there's a really good website that everyone can go on. It's like www.eggcollection Australia, and you can put your age in and your AMH, and it tells you.
Okay, I'll put that. And also, did this influence your decision? Obviously, not through pressure, but through learning these statistics?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. It probably took me by surprise after the fertility doctor. Like, it was just something that wasn't on my radar. As I said, I wasn't that girl that thought, I'm going to freeze my eggs. I'm not a person who's super stressed about their fertility all the time. When I turned 30, it wasn't a big deal for me. That hasn't been me. I think it caught me off guard more than anything. I think I was a bit like, this is my reality. The thing that got me was, it's not dire, but it's not great. I think that was the line that I was like, I probably need to think about this more than I had potentially thought. The statistics helped, I guess, with the decision. I probably thought naively, again, it's like, I'll probably get 20. So do one round, I'll get 20, and then I'm done. I could be that annoying girl who has come on this podcast, talks about it, and then accidentally gets pregnant because
Would be amazing.
would be amazing. But as in like fertility is such, we don't know. It's so unknown. So it was kind of a decision at the time I could make by myself, wasn't pressured by anyone else. This was a me decision. I could do this. I had the money. I had a job that had really good reproductive leave that I could take at this time. And I'm not in an ongoing contract. Well, if I'm going to do it, it's a bit of a now or never, potentially. It was probably more a practical decision, if I'm honest, about I had the leave, I had the job, I had the money. 31 to 33 is a good time. Let's just do it now, be done with it. Then I don't have to think about it again.
Okay.
I spoke to a lot of friends about it. One of my really good friends, she froze her eggs at 35 and hasn't used them. So she's older now and I don't think she ever will. And I said, oh, do you regret that decision? Absolutely not. Not one part of me regrets it. She goes, I would have spent 10 grand in therapy. And I'm very similar to her. We're cut from very similar cloths. And maybe it was just what was happening around me at the time. But a lot of my friends are going through IVF and bless them, they make it look easy. You know, they're coming to work, they're living a normal life. So I was like, it won't be that hard. It's a thing, I'll do it, then I'm done. That was probably, in the end, it was a bit more of a practical decision than an emotional decision. That's kind of where I landed with that in the end.
Before you spoke to the fertility doctor, and even before your doctor brought up to you that, you know, it would be a good idea to freeze your eggs, were you ever concerned about your fertility because of your endometriosis and PCOS, or is that not something that has ever really entered your mind? Are you more just focused on it would be a good idea to kind of living in the symptoms and getting those things sorted?
Yeah, it hasn't. And naively, I'm one of 3 under 3. Yeah. So I obviously didn't struggle to get pregnant. My auntie was 34 and had endometriosis and accidentally got pregnant. So part of me has always thought, it's just going to happen when I've decided it's going to happen. And maybe it will. Maybe I'm being naive. Who knows? So there was part of me that had just not really stressed about it.
When you did decide that you were going to freeze your eggs, was there anything that felt scary about it, or was it overwhelming, or did you feel empowered making this decision?
Initially, it was overwhelming, but I was so lucky. I had a really supportive boss, like unbelievably supportive. I can't stress that enough. So I felt comfortable telling her. I felt comfortable taking leave when I needed it. I had a really good group of friends that a lot had been going through IVF. So I felt really supported by them. I'd made the decision not to tell my parents, probably to protect myself emotionally. I think they would have met well and my parents are amazing, but it just would have been too much. There would have been too many questions. I just couldn't have done it. And I think probably a lot of my friends, not all, but like a lot with children, I had to protect my peace a little bit for a few months. Like a lot of my friends have new babies and I will love them, I'm sure. But I have had to keep my distance the last 4 months. I think in the end, during it, it did feel quite empowering. And when I went for my first scan and I was sitting in the waiting room and you look around, there's so many older women who wouldn't have had that opportunity. The technology wasn't this good. Like the technology has improved. That's why we're hearing about it more, right? The technology now, the defrosting rates are so good. That was the issue before. They couldn't defrost them well enough. The technology has improved like a million times in the last 3 or 4 years. When I did go to that appointment, I did feel quite lucky that I was able to do this. You go through a lot of emotions, probably all of them at the time.
And do you feel like before you had your egg collection, you felt ready for the risks that could have been involved or any of the side effects that followed egg collection?
Nah, because so many people do it, right? We've just spoken about it. It's so common and people are rocking up to work all the time. All of my friends, like one of my best friends had gone through it lots and I didn't even know. I think I'm in health, so I'm not a needle phobe. Needles don't bother me. I was like, that'll be fine. I've had laps. An egg collection is going to be a piece of cake. But I don't think we'll get to it. But what happened to me is so rare. It's like when you read like the paracetamol box and it's like, you might develop a stroke. It wasn't that I was ill-informed. It was that I was so unlucky.
And I think egg collection can look really different for a lot of people. As you said, there's people that have it and then the next day they're back at work, but then there's other people that have it and it takes them a week to recover. Everyone's bodies are different and it's just such a personal process to go through.
Yeah, that's it. And everyone's body reacts different. And I think probably what I learned through going through the process is it's still a bit of a pseudoscience, which sounds weird. They're still adjusting your meds throughout and they're still like, oh, we'll go a bit higher, we'll go a bit lower. It is really suck and see.
Your first round is experiment, and if it works well, if it doesn't, it's well, our next round, we know more information, but a lot of people aren't lucky enough to be able to afford a next round.
They don't know how you're going to react with the medication and that's just I'm sure if it was a male condition, we would.
All right, let's move through your actual egg collection. Did you want to walk us through what that process looked like for you?
Yeah, so I had been on contraceptive pill for a long time, right? So I had to go get bloods and then I couldn't. Day 3 was actually my day 1. So that's when I started my injections. I reckon by day 2, it was early. I remember saying to you, I was immediately bloated. I was like, this must just be normal. God, why doesn't anyone talk about this? But I was really bloated and I was really emotional. I probably cry a lot generally, like easily. But I remember I had a meeting with my boss, like our big boss. He said something which normally wouldn't set me off, like a feedback, and I cried like in the room. I remember like on the Wednesday I was with a patient and they said that I looked pretty and I cried. Just drop of the hat, like stupid stuff. So that was that. And then I had to get another blood test. Must have been day 3, day 4, maybe day 5 or 6. And they weren't happy with my, I want to say, estrogen level. So they upped my medications again. And I was like, okay, here we go. And then I had the scan on the Friday. So at Melbourne, the doctors do the scan. And that was the first time I'd met my doctor in person. And she was amazing. Like I felt so comfortable with her. I felt so safe. She did the scan and she's like, you've got, I think it was about 11, but there's lots of little ones, you know. Let's keep pushing because I reckon they'll grow. So that was the Friday. Then the Monday morning, I had to go back, got a scan, and there was 18. Anything over 16, you're diagnosed with ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. Because I was at 18, I was diagnosed then, so I had daily phone calls. But again, she was like, there's a few more, I reckon. Let's like wait another day and then do your trigger. At this stage, I was full. So that was, the scan was on the Monday. Tuesday, I was so nauseous. I'd been pretty nauseous over the weekend, but could still eat. By the Tuesday, I had stopped eating because I was so nauseous. Trigger on the Tuesday night, and it's fine. I've got 18. This is all going to be worth it. I'll have my trigger. I don't care if I'm nauseous, whatever. This is all fine because it's all worth it. Short-term pain, long-term gain was the aim. If I could just do one round, brilliant. And they do try to do that with people with endo. They try to start at a higher dose to really pump you to try and get as much so you don't have to do it again. And then I was booked in for the Thursday for my egg collection. The thing they probably don't talk about when you do egg freezing single is, and if you don't want to tell your parents for trident, is you need someone to get you. You can't drive. So that's always an interesting discussion. So I was very lucky. I had a very good sister-in-law who picked me up. But you go in, I don't know, probably because I've had surgeries. I didn't feel that overwhelmed. I just kind of went in. I was uncomfortable, but I was like, I'm going to feel way better. Going to get heaps of eggs. This is going to be brilliant. So I went into the surgical room, which was pretty intimidating. I don't know how you felt. There's a lot of people in the room.
Yeah, it's pretty confronting.
And because I think with endo, you're on a trolley and they wheel you in.
Like when in normal surgery, you can't just there.
Yeah, you had to walk in. It is a lot. There was like, everyone was kind of there. And that was probably the first time I felt a bit like, had the anesthetic. I love an anesthetic. I love a good sleep. All good. Woke up. All fine. And then they just transfer you to a chair. Is this what happened to you?
Yeah, I remember being wheeled into recovery and there was other beds and then Wes just sort of wake up properly then.
Yeah. And then when I was sitting in the chair, this nurse, she was flustered, just come in and hands me this bit of paper. Just like chucks this bit of paper at me. And I was like, okay. And I just had the number on it. They had collected 10 eggs. From 18, I was down to 10. And then the doctor come and she was like, you weren't meant to get that. I'm so sorry.
Is there an explanation why they thought?
I don't know. I think that I was the last of the day. I was probably pretty late. I was probably 12:30.
So that's probably the last one.
I think they're probably like trying to go home. She's like, we would have hoped for more. 10 is still really good. I hope that when we freeze them, hopefully they're still, or when they go and look at it in the lab to check the size, hopefully that's still 10. And I was like, cool, that's great. Like on the way home, I felt pretty much immediately not as bloated. So I felt pretty good that day. And then they just email and they're like, 6 have been frozen. So I've gone from 18 to 6.
I cannot believe that wasn't a phone call.
I think that was the first time probably emotionally it got to me. And this is probably why I think it's important to talk about numbers.
Yeah.
Because I think when you got 18 follicles, you think there's an egg in every follicle, right? But there's not. And I think my doctor had said as well, it's a rough guide and there's no evidence or research, but whatever your AMH is, we would like to get that in eggs. So in my head, I was like, okay, 13. And then I'm down at 6. So I'm half or less than half of that.
And did they talk you through, I guess, before that could happen, that you could get 10 eggs and then by the time they go to freeze, it's 6? Because
no, so I think they say maybe 70%.
Okay.
Maybe. But again, I was less than that. I think it's just being realistic with your expectations. If I want anyone to take anything away, it's just being a bit real. Like you kind of think you're going to be at higher numbers than you do. And the thing with egg freezing, that probably was another reason I really tossed and turned about whether I'd do it, was they can't test the quality of your eggs. They can test quality of embryos, but eggs, I could have 6 eggs and they could be the best quality. I might only need 1, but those 6 could be awful quality, but you don't know. It is really a gamble. It's like an absolute gamble when you do it. So again, I knew that going in, and I think that's important that you have that kind of expectation. And then Friday, I probably could have worked Friday. I felt pretty good, but I was emotionally exhausted just with the kind of letdown of the 18 to 6. I think I just couldn't emotionally front up, and my best friend come over that day, and weirdly, I really wanted to see her kid, which sounds a bit weird, but I think in my head, I just wanted to know that this was worth it. This whole thing was, that's what you're doing it for. And she was great. She was amazing. And I felt pretty good that day. And then Saturday, I started to feel a bit bloated and nauseous again. Sunday went downhill. When I mean downhill, I like abdominal cramping, really bad bloating, like just so uncomfortable and so painful. And the nurses called me on the Sunday just to check in. And I said Saturday, I was like, oh, I'm feeling a bit bloated and nauseous again. And they're like, that should go away, but we'll call you again Monday because I don't work Sunday. I was in so much pain. I rang virtual EDs. That's a really good service as well. So it's public, it's online. Consultants talk to you. It's not a nurse, it's a consultant doctor. So I called virtual ED and explained that I'd had an egg collection on the Thursday. I'd been diagnosed with OHSS, which this is the cooked thing. Because even if you get low eggs, you had really high follicles, you still have OHSS. Got diagnosed with OHSS, nauseous, vomiting, etc. And he was like, look, you're going to have to go to ED. You need a scan to check that your ovaries haven't twisted or that they're still intact. So presented to ED and they did the best with what they had. I presented publicly, which I think probably was the right decision, just financially. And in Geelong, Epworth doesn't have like maternity now, so there would be no gynae at Reg. Presented and it was a while, probably 6 hours. Got seen by a doctor. It was a guy. He was lovely. He really tried to understand, but he couldn't. He didn't get it. Had never heard of OHSS. Didn't know. And like, they wouldn't, right? Yeah. It's not common. He's going to be writing me up for a case study. Like, he rang gyno and they were like, she needs to be admitted. She needs a scan. So I was admitted. Had a scan Monday morning. Showed my ovaries were so enlarged and I had free fluid in my abdomen. So that can happen with when you have OHSS. Your ovaries get so big that then fluid starts to leak into your abdomen. So that's the really scary end of it. And again, the gynae consults in ED or in the public hospital were excellent. They were really good. It was really postural. It was when I stood up because they said what happens is your weight and your organs then press down on your ovaries and you get so much pain. That's when you need to vomit. She was just like, you just need to go home, lay flat pretty much for 2 days. So did that, thought I was on the up. I was on the mend, was getting better. And then on the Wednesday night, went downhill again, vomiting, fevers, nausea, back to ED. I hadn't eaten probably then by nearly a week. Wild, my ketones were everywhere. So again, admitted fluids and IV antis in the end because I'd developed an infection.
And is that something that can happen?
Again, uncommon.
But obviously can happen.
This is, as I said, this is like getting a stroke from Panadol. This is very rare, but again, it just means that I won't do this again, I don't think. Like for me, I think it's just important for people to understand that it's a possibility. It's super rare. It's hard when you're going through it by yourself. I was so lucky, had really supportive friends and really supportive sister-in-law, but it's tough. Like
1,000%.
It's so tough. And I remember so vividly how hopeless I felt. I was so unwell. I haven't been that unwell probably ever. You're vomiting, you're like, can't eat, you're so sick, you're lying in ED. And I understand it now why you couldn't be seen, but you're lying there for 7 hours.
It's awful.
Like,
on your own as well.
On your own. And it wasn't on my, not, people can't do heaps for you, but it's more the fact then I'm like, should I be here? I think that your question, and at one stage I was about to leave. I'm obviously not that sick. You're starting to think you kind of
gaslighting yourself.
Yeah, well, you just got to think you're being a sook because you're like, I've got all these friends who have gone through it. The second doctor I got, she was amazing. She'd actually done egg freezing as well. And she was like, no one tells you how bad it is after, do they? And I was like, no. All you can do, and all the specialists, and bless the specialist, she was really good. She personally called me after for a few days. But the specialist's like, I'm really sorry, you just have to wait for your period to come. And that's 2 weeks.
It's the unknown. So you're like, I've got to go through this for 2 weeks.
Yes. So you're doing 2 weeks of needles, the stims, and then 2 weeks you've got to wait until
vomiting and
nausea,
laying
pain. Yeah. And that's what this doctor said as well. She goes, I wasn't obviously as bad as you, but she goes, I was so unwell for the 2 weeks after. So it's 4 weeks. It's not a 2-week thing for a lot of people. I think that's probably the thing, although mine are like, we're talking the end of the scale. There are people probably for the 2 weeks after who feel uncomfortable.
Was there any discussion, obviously, when you're on the stims and then you got diagnosed, of doing a different injection?
I guess I was so far down the tracks. I got diagnosed and then it was like day 2, 3. And I think if I went through it again, it'd be completely different protocol. And like they would know and they'd be so careful with me. And I'm sure this wouldn't happen again. I completely trust her and I'm not like, oh my God, she's stuffed up. That's not what I'm thinking at all. It's more that just, I don't know how you're going to react. What's your body's going to do?
There is a practice now that they change the injection and you still have symptoms afterwards, but not to the degree that you had.
Yeah. And it was probably funny because one of my friends said to me, so do you think that second when you start what's the injection that stops you ovulating? The
Ovidril?
Yeah. When you start that second injection, so you're on one injection for the first week and then you start your second. She goes, do you think it was that made? I was like, potentially. And she goes, I think that makes me feel a bit funny, but you probably can't at the time. You don't recognize that. It's just not something to do lightly. And I think this is the important thing. It's not just freeze your eggs and it's a guarantee and move on and it's fine. Like it is a big deal. So I think you just have to be really informed and make an informed decision. Not think it like 28-year-olds who are like, I'm just going to freeze my eggs. And it's, oh no. I think that's the conversation that sometimes is missing or they see it as a guarantee. They're like, we'll just freeze our eggs and everything will be fine.
Yeah, people think it's not an insurance.
No, it's not an insurance policy to take lightly. I think it's interesting. There's been a lot of like research and evidence about the social impacts of IVF and, the technology and stuff now. And a lot of it talks about like women aren't good at having conversations anymore because men and people are like, oh, you can just freeze your eggs or we'll just freeze it and we'll get to it later. So it's more like you still need to be empowered to control your own journey, to control your own fertility and have those discussions. So if you're in a relationship at, whatever age and fertility comes up, that it's not just like, oh, we'll just freeze your eggs later and we'll sort it out later. That's not how it works.
No.
It's not an easy decision.
No, it's hard. You put your body through so much. But if it goes well, as it should, your body still goes through so much. That the hormones that they pump in, it's insane. Because even when you spoke about day 2, you're already bloated.
And I reckon my emotions didn't get back to baseline until a good 6 to 8 weeks. Because
that's pretty standard.
Like it knocks you around. I think people take it. And I'm an example. I think we take it a bit lightly.
Yeah. And I think people think about the physical side of it, but they don't think about the emotional toll as well. And I guess this is a question for you going through the stims and then obviously going to the egg collection on your own and then dealing with being sick on your own after that. Did that kind of, I guess, make you feel more like you were doing it on your own and like that pressure or any kind of feelings come up in regards to that?
It was really interesting because, as I said, I was so lucky. Like my best friend was amazing and had been through it and was a nurse and like she was just unreal. And my sister-in-law again was unreal. So I didn't really feel alone. I think what it did make me realize is I wouldn't do this alone. And there's probably part of me that was lucky that I had a friend. Like some people would say that's a better system than a partner. So it wasn't that. It was probably more the body was failing me again. I think that was probably the endo surgery last time had gone a bit bad and there was probably a bit of a victim like poor me again.
But understandable.
Yeah.
You've been through a lot.
But I think now coming out of it, coming to the end of the year, I think it's like 2026 might be my year. But again, I couldn't imagine going through this in a new relationship. Can you imagine? It would be full on. There's part of me I'm glad that I've done it. Those 6 might be excellent. They could be shit, but it's something. Yes, it's there. And maybe if I got to 33 or 4 and I was still single I'd think about it again. But for right now, and the fertility doctor was the same. She didn't push me after it. She goes, your 6 at 31 are going to be better than someone 6 who's above 33. So like the quality's there. Not a lot of doctors would say that, I think. A lot would be like, okay, like you only got 6, we've got to do more. But she was very much, go and live your life, go meet a partner and then come back. She was great. She was like funny. She's like, you'll meet someone, you're lovely. And then I cried because the hormones. It's just having a team again that you trust and is not pressuring you into decisions that you don't feel 100% sure about because it's not a decision to be taken lightly.
For sure. You've already spoken about this, but I guess moving from the surgery to the egg collection, now coming out the other side, do you feel like your mental health was affected at the time and is it affected now or do you think you've moved through it?
It was interesting. again, well engaged with psych, so another good team member. And I had psych like this week after about 2 months. So it had been a bit of a gap. And it was funny. I was like, it should make me panicked, right? You'd think like 31, you've been told your fertility's die and now you've only collected 6 eggs.
Yeah.
Like the old me or the anxious me would have been like, I need to meet someone. But I think it actually has just made me realize that I don't need to meet someone. I need to meet the right person. And I'm not rushed by that. I feel lucky that my mental health's in a good place. If I'd done this 2 or 3 years ago, I wouldn't have survived. So I think really lucky that my mental health is in a strong place. Other things drop away.
Yeah.
It's that age-old debate, isn't it? You can't have everything.
Yes.
Like you can't have everything all at once. So probably my work has suffered. Probably haven't done well there because my health has been the priority. But again, I still think I'm young. And I probably forget that I actually forget that I'm 31. I think in my head I'm 25. So maybe if I'm 35, I'll probably have an existential crisis. But right now, I feel okay.
You've already spoken a lot about this. I guess if there's anything else you want to add, just how this experience has impacted your view on fertility, motherhood, future family plans. You've already spoken about, being a little bit naive before you walked into it. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
It's really funny because I'm like the oldest in my family, got lots of cousins. I'm that kind of person. And so I have always kind of thought I'd have kids. Going through this, it really makes you realize hats off to any single mother or anyone who gets a sperm donor and does it by themselves, because it would be extraordinarily tough. And you would ask a lot of your parents, like you would be asking them to give up their retirement and stuff. So it's made me realize it's not for me unless it's the right situation. Probably at one stage in my life, I'm like, regardless of situation, I want to be a mother. But I think now I've realized how important situation is. And if not, I'll be the best auntie and I'm okay with that. I think it's probably helped me realize that decision. And it's probably made me realize again how important having a good partner is more than anything. And a partner that loves you for you, I think, and like before a child or before anything else, that you know that a child's only going to add to that relationship. Maybe that's naive and to open all the apps, but hopefully one day.
You're still only 31 and then moving through a very difficult egg collection is a lot at your age. I think that you are in a really good headspace and you shouldn't feel those pressures at this age because there is so much time. Whether or not you want to have kids, there is so much time and there is so much great technology now that you've got a lot of years in front of you.
Yeah, exactly. And as we've spoken about, like I've done it once now. So even if I go back at 33, they know there's what to do. There has been different things. So do I regret it? No. Like I think that's probably everyone's question is with all of these symptoms, all of these side effects, the low numbers, do I regret it? No.
I have seen some videos of people, even just the bloating when you overstimulate is insane. I can imagine.
And I think we said this jokingly. I think we went to coffee and I was like bloated and I stood up and I was in exercise shorts and my head's so cooked because I look about 8 months pregnant.
And that's the cruel thing too, because a lot of these people, they might be trying to actively get pregnant at that time and then they've got this cruel symptom where they look pregnant. Like it's just not. It's not fair.
And look, me and my friend joke, but we always have the saying that men could never.
Yes.
And I think that is like so important. When you're going through it, it's like, men could never. Like if men were like in charge of repopulating the earth, we would be extinct.
Yes.
Like,
I agree with that.
Bless them, love them. But, I think it's just really important. There is something empowering in it for part of it, but it's just not, don't take the decision lightly. Would be and find a care team that you trust would be my 2 things that I'm like really passionate about.
And then now looking back, is there anything that you wish, and I mean, you've already touched on this a lot, but is there anything that you wish you had really known about egg collection before you did it?
Not really. I think I was informed as well as I could be. I just think it's about being informed. Obviously, podcasts like this are really helpful. The book, How to Endo, we can link that in the show notes as well, is really good. Written by Bridget Huswaite. It's really good if you're having a laparoscope or like about to go through that kind of as a first time. That's a really good resource. I think it's just being realistic and aware. I think there's a lot of the miracle stories, that people have talked about, the infertility, and that is great. But there are other stories that it's like, you're going to get OHSS, unfortunately. But just about being informed. I think that's the thing. Yeah, it's interesting because I think probably a lot of the research and the evidence and stuff would suggest that we should speak about it earlier. So speak about it in school. And I do get that. You've really got to find the balance. So I do see the argument for that, but also you don't want to scare people at 16 because there is a line. But I think it's just about advocating for yourself. And if it doesn't feel right, I think the endo, it presents in so many ways, and knowing that if you're having these weird symptoms, you can't get to the bottom of it, like IBS, recurrent kidney infections, UTIs, all of these things, to consider it as a diagnosis. And ultrasound is getting much better now. If you can find a good women's health sonographer, it'll show a bit, even if they're uncomfortable, but they're not the worst, right? Like internal ultrasound, they're annoying, but they're not disastrous. Even like just considering like maybe advocating for that rather than being like, I want a laparoscope, because that's a big deal. Advocating for an internal ultrasound just to really kind of do that. But yeah, it's just finding a good team, even like being prepared for that. As in, if you don't like your GP now and you think in 3 years you're going to have kids, find a GP that you feel comfortable with. Yeah. Because they're tough conversations to have. And if you don't feel supported by them, it's not great. So I think that's a really easy step to start with. I think it's just about being informed.
And you've given so much amazing advice throughout this conversation, but is there any final advice you'd like to give to anyone that might be considering egg freezing and they might have some fertility issues, or even they're thinking that they've got fertility issues but they're not quite sure? Is there any final words or advice for them what they should do moving forward?
I think just be careful with AMH, if I'm honest. If there was one thing, there's no perfect test. They say the best way to test your fertility is to start trying. So I think now a lot of people go to the doctor and get an AMH and then they panic. Again, I just do your research around your AMH and understanding what that means for you and how that looks in the picture, because the scale is so big and so broad, you know. So just be like, just understand what that test means for you when you get it, just ensuring that you feel prepared with that information, and then you find a doctor that you trust, that you don't feel like you're being pressured to make a decision, would probably be my 2 things. And I think as much as we love TikTok, don't do your research on TikTok. The algorithm kills you. Yeah. It feeds you like everything you want to hear. Like, mate, I was in the Reddit forums. I was all over the Reddit forums about, is this normal? Is this normal? Did anyone like chat GPT? All of that. Yeah. But do your research on reputable sites. Listen to podcasts with IVF doctors, or read books that have got evidence-based material. Do some good research, like not TikTok research.
Solid. All right. Well, thank you so much for this chat. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your not only story, but a lot of advice and some really good insight into what egg collection could look like and what people should look out for. And it will give women the opportunity to empower themselves, self-educate before making these decisions. So thank you so much. This has been The Space Between Two Lines. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and register on our website to share your story. The link is in the bio. Until next time.